Hello and welcome back to the channel and this new video on the Odyssey, on just the translations of the Odyssey. So, just grab Odyssey and the Iliad. Let me correct myself. The Odyssey and the Iliad. So, I have my big copy of the Iliad of Homer. Richmond Lattimore is the translator. Drawings by Leonard Baskin. And yeah, big old, huge copy. Um, you would think these things don't have to be that big. You're correct. You're not incorrect. The other one that I have is buried, but it's approximately, this size. This size is the Odyssey of Homer, translated by T.E. Lawrence, the Lawrence of Arabia. Introduction by Bernard Cox, and this is more novel version of the Odyssey, if you will. Book one. By now, the other warriors, those that had escaped headlong ruin by sea or in battle, were safely home. Only Odysseus tarried, shut up by Lady Calypso, a nymph and very goddess in her hewn-out caves. She craved him for her bedmate while he was longing for his house and his wife. Oh, of a truth, the rolling seasons had at last brought up the year marked by the gods for his return to Ithaca. But not even there, among his loved things, would he escape further conflict. Yet had all the gods, with lapse of time, grown compassionate toward Odysseus, but all but Poseidon, whose enmity flamed ever against him till he had reached his home. Poseidon, however, was for the moment far away among the Ethiopians, that last race of men whose dispersion across uh, the world's end is so broad that some of them can see the sun god rise while others see him set. Thither had Poseidon gone in the hope of burnt offerings, bulls and rams by hundreds, and there he sat feasting merrily while the other gods came together in the halls of Olympian Zeus. To them, the father of gods and men began speech, for his breast teemed with thought of great um, Aegisthus, whom famous Orestes, the son of Agamemnon, had slain. Da, 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 da. So that's the beginning of book one for him. Of course, right before that, it gives the kind of the introduction, which I read in the other video. Oh, divine Posy, goddess daughter of Zeus, sustain for me the song of the various minded man, who, after he had plundered the innermost citadel of hallowed Troy, was made to stray grievously about the coast of men. It goes on. That little introduction portion he sets before book one. Of course, there's this that thing, but that's quite a bit. I would say sort of rewritten um, to move about some of the wording. But anyway, and of course we got this other the Odyssey, translated by Alexander Pope, and in the other video um, on the brief summary of the Odyssey, I read a portion of that, so you can certainly check that out. I'm not going to try to read. I'm going to try my best not to read a whole lot of these things. I have started my own little collection, if you will, of um, of the Odyssey and the Iliad in various formats. Uh, just kind of looking for these things. So we're going to go into this, and I want to start with the Iliad and give you a list of the Iliad. Now, there's a lot of translations. There are a lot of translations. Okay. Um, and in fact, with the Iliad, there are more translations than I'm seeing here. I think I see where this is. There we go, the Iliad. So I've got kind of two different lists. So I'm not going to go through both lists of the Iliad, but one of the lists was just kind of a way of looking at this. It was like 56 versions, and researching this, and basically, uh, I'm not saying that you have to use AI. AI just helps with research as far as shortening some time occasionally on something obscure like this that I'm not really trying to find the exact um, for certain every aspect is exactly perfect. I'm going to use AI for something that I'm just trying to get done quickly. Hope that makes some sense. But there's 56 of them, and I'm like, AI keeps telling me there's over 100. What's the point? And why was it telling me that and then not giving me that? Well, it got me up to about 75, and still why? Well, the answer is that when they say over 100, uh, they're saying that there's projects were started, so they publish portions of them, and we're not going to include those kind of things. If they only did 4 books of it, or did it for a magazine, or only left, drafts behind, they're still counted in the total of 100, if you would, but not something you would be able to get if it's let's just say who is it I think it was Vince Flynn passed away. Let's say that he started a translation of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and he got maybe halfway through both of them, and the rest of them were super rough drafts let's just say he's doing a translation of it, translation or even a rewriting. He's going to retell the entire story in a modern version, and so he translates the whole thing in a rough draft. He gets about halfway through each of the books in a second to fourth rough draft, adjusting and making combining characters and whatever you would do to make a modern rendition of it, and so forth. And you have half of it finished, sort of, and then half of it left where it's not finished. And what are you gonna do? You know. So that's where we're at right there. Is there's a bunch of things that had portions, um, like I said, serialized randomly in Victorian literary magazines. So it said, books 12 through 18 or something like that. Then some obscure magazine. You could find it maybe and you could read it, but um, it's not a full translation. It's not a full work. It's not completed, and that works for both the Iliad and the Odyssey. But anyway, we got 75, so we don't want to waste much time. 75 translations of the Iliad to just talk about, and then also 60, I think it's 68 of the Odyssey. So we're going to try to make this in one row, one run. Um, I'm not going to look at that. I'm look at this. All right. So number one, the 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 true historical first attempt at an English Iliad is books 1 through 10, translated from a French intermediary version by Hughes Salel. The translation by Arthur Hall into English. 1581, books 1 through 10. Now, the Iliad. I feel like I'm not wrong in the number of books that I know it has, but I'm going to verify it before I say it. Yep, 24 books. 24 books in the Iliad, 24 books in the Odyssey. So this is only books 1 through 10. Where? I'm maybe losing my battery. So on my um, um, mouse. So I may have to pause it and change it. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Well, again, 1581, Arthur Hall. I do not have a copy of it, did not look for it, did not find this. Number 2 is going to be 1598 to 1611, is George Chapman, the legendary first complete translation directly from the Greek text, written in booming 14-syllable rhyming lines, 14ers. Now, we'll meet this again with the Odyssey. I'm going to pause with this one because I have a copy of the whole works of Homer, or it's the works of George Chapman, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, edited with notes by Richard Hearn Shepherd. This is from 1875, the printing of it. So it's the works being reprinted. George Chapman, translated according to the Greek. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, commendatory verses. So people, blurbs, things people saying, praises. Uh, oh, some other works. A preface to the reader of all books extant and all kinds. Homer is the first and best. No one before his, Josephus affirms, nor before him, says Velius, Paterculus. Anyway, was there any whom he imitated, nor after him any that could imitate him? And that poesy may be no cause of detraction from all the eminence we give him. Spontaneous, preferring it to all arts and sciences, answerably agrees and proves for to the glory of God and the singing of his glories, no man dares deny man was chiefly made. And what art performs this chief end of man with so much excitation and expression as poesy? Moses, David, Solomon, Job, Isaiah, Jeremy, and chiefly using that to the end above said. And since that the excellence of it cannot be obtained by the labor and art of man, as all easily confess it, it must needs be acknowledged a divine infusion, to prove which, in a word, this distich, in my estimation, serves something nearly great poesy. Blind Homer makes all see thee capable of all arts, none of thee. Hmm. For out of him, according to our most grave and judicial Plutarch, are all arts deduced, confirmed, or illustrated. It is not, therefore, the world's vilifying of it that can make it vile, for so we might agree and blaspheme the most incomparably sacred. It is not of the world indeed, but like truth hides itself from it, nor is there any such reality of wisdom's truth in all human excellence as in poets' fictions. That most vulgar and foolish receipt of poetical license being of all knowing men to be exploded, uh, accepting it as if poets had a tale-telling privilege above others, no artist being so strictly and inextricably confined to all the laws of learning, wisdom, and truth as a poet, etc., etc., etc. It's going on and on. And I would need to read this and decipher what it's saying. Anyway, talking of Homer later on, talking about other things, giving some dedicatories, several different dedicatories from earls and so forth. And to the understander, you are not everybody to you as to one of my very few friends. I may be bold to utter my mind, nor is it too, nor is it more, uh, nor is it more impaired to an honest and absolute man's deficiency to have few friends than to an Homerical poem to have few commenders. Okay. The first book, here we go, of Homer's Iliads. And it's an argument, another argument, etc., etc., etc. Now it starts off, it says, Apollo's priest to the Argive fleet doth bring gifts for his daughter prisoner to the king, for which her tendered freedom he entreats, but being dismissed with uh, contumelious, contumelious, Elias, gotta read it, Contumelious, threats at Phoebus's hands. By vengeful prayer he seeks to have a plague inflicted on the Greeks, which had Achilles doth a council cite, emboldening Calchas in the king's despite to tell the truth why they were punished so. From hence their fierce and deadly strife did grow, for wrong in which uh, let's see, Aesiids, I'm not sure, so raves that goddess Thetis from her throne of waves, ascending heaven of Jove, assistance won to plague the Greeks by absence of her son, and make the general himself repeat to wrong so much of his army's ornament. This found by Juno, she with Jove contends till Vulcan with heaven's cup and the quarrel ends. And it continues on. Another argument. Alpha the prayer, uh, crisis things. Okay, it's a little bit. Um, the print of it's a little bit fuzzy, but anyway, that's the Iliad beginning. If I skip on about halfway through. Um, Second book of Odysseus now. 23rd book of Iliad. There we go. 24th, end of the 24th book. All right, then it goes on to an after writing. Brought my translation of his Iliads to an end. And he calls it Iliads with the plural, Iliads. And then Odysseus, translated according to the Greek. Hey, let's jump right into it. The gods in council sit to call Ulysses from Calypso's thrall, and order their highest pleasures. Thus, grey Pallas to Telemachus in Ithaca, her way addressed, and um, uh, grey Pallas to Telemachus. Anyway, again, one of these things I'd have to read, decipher, and not let all these slips of the copy mess me up. It's got a little notes in too. It's pretty cool. But anyway, that's the beginning of the Odyssey. So that's George Chapman doing the first. It is available. Like I said, I've started to make um, a folder to copy as many things as I can find. So I looked for number 3. Number 3 is John Ogilvy, the grand, lavishly illustrated folio edition utilizing stately rhyming heroic couplets. I'm not going to say this is not available. I'm going to say this is not available in a free format in a PDF that I could find or any other kind of text. It looks like a reprint is available. I'm talking about, I just said free. Okay, so, that's where I'm starting. I've got plenty of free stuff. I don't need to go and buy a whole bunch of things. I did go to the store. I think it's in another video that I did find Alexander Pope's copy of the Odyssey available in a new format, which I may buy. It looks like a nice copy, and I want to find more copies. So I may go to the bookstore sometime pretty soon and say, all right, want to see the Odyssey. Where are all the? You should have this section that you've pulled together, all copies of the Odyssey, and you've got 20 different translations of it and stuff like that. Maybe they won't. You can go, and I say the Odyssey, and I believe the Iliad as well. Samuel Butler, which we'll get to, has a translation of the Odyssey that LibriVox and other YouTube channels, I say LibriVox is on several YouTube channels, in fact, but various YouTube channels, not even LibriVox, okay, um, are reading Samuel Butler's public domain version of the Odyssey. Okay, and I mentioned that Richmond Lattimore's translation is being read by somebody of the Odyssey. The Iliad probably will be done, later on. And they're up to, well, I didn't look recently, but as far as I saw, I think they're up to about book 6 or 7 at the time. And I there was another fellow. I want to say he was reading Samuel Butler's version. He might have been reading Fagel's though. But he and his wife were doing a joint discussion on the Odyssey, reading through or reading. I think they read a couple different translations themselves and discussing it, coming up to the movie, The Odyssey, and then discussing the movie. And they were also doing, or he was doing, as I understand it, a reading of one of the translations of the Odyssey. Might have been Fagel's, I'm not sure. So we'll get to those translations here in a second too. But anyway, John Ogilvy's. I did see like where you could actually buy some copies of the thing. Far too expensive for me to even try to do at this time, and but it is out there and it's available. I've just never seen it, so I don't know about it. Anyway, that was in 1660, John Ogilvy. Then 1676, Thomas Hobbes uh, did one translation, a structurally rigid rhyming version written by the famous political philosopher. Number 5 here is, if we're still on the Iliad, of course, in 1715 to 1720, Alexander Pope, a foundational masterpiece of literature, Augustan literature, not Augustinian, okay, so it's Augustan literature, written in highly polished, fluid, heroic couplets. Now, because I see that there, that he did this, I want a copy of it. Uh, I want a copy of it, and I have a copy of it. I have several copies of it actually. When you start looking for these things and find them available out and about somewhere, then you know you just make yourself a copy. Download a copy. So John Lubbock's 100 Books, the Iliad and Odyssey of Homer, translated by Alexander Pope, edited by the Reverend H.F. Carey, A.M., with an introduction by the Right Honorable Sir John Lubbock, whatever Bart means, and DCLMP. This is from 1891. They got the introduction. Come on now. There we go. The Iliad of Homer. Got a preface. Let's skip the preface and just get a couple of lines. I apologize. My computer's like malfunctioning or something. Book 1. Arguments. The contention of Achilles and Agamemnon. This is kind of interesting because it's not written in rhyme here. And I don't know if this is just an introduction. In the War of Troy, the Greeks, having sacked some of the neighboring towns, have and taken from thence two beautiful captives. Um, Chrysius, it's really small. Uh, Chrysius, maybe. Anyway, it's Chryseis, and Briseis, Briseis, allotted the first to Agamemnon and the last to Achilles. Chryses, the father of Chryseis. I apologize, but you can check this out. And priest of Apollo comes to the Grecian camp to ransom her, with which the action of the poem opens in the 10th year of the siege. 10 years. Anyway, the priest, being refused and instantly dismissed by Agamemnon, entreats for vengeance from his god, who inflicts a pestilence on the Greeks. Achilles calls a council and encourages Calchas to declare the cause of it, etc., etc. So Achilles' wrath to Greece, the direful spring of woes unnumbered, heavenly goddess sing. Wrath which hurled to Pluto's gloomy reign the souls of mighty chiefs untimely slain, whose limbs unburied on the naked shore, devouring dogs and hungry vultures tore. Since great Achilles and Atrids strove, such was the sovereign doom, and such the will of Jove. Declare, O Muse, in what ill-fated hour sprung the fierce strife, from what offended power, etc., etc., etc. I'm not here to read the whole thing, but anyway, you can get it. And I would like this in a nice physical copy as well, but being able to have it just in digital is cool. There's a bunch of them. Uh, I mean, I think I have 22, which is the Odyssey and the Iliad. Um, so it's close to 10 each or whatever it is. Um, but I have copies of that. I have about 5 copies, I want to say, of the Iliad, the Odyssey, or both of them, one of them or the other, of George Chapman's. Then you got a couple others, and I'm not gonna sit here and go back and forth and read them all. But let's get on to this a little bit. Number 6, though, 1721, Madame Dacier, let's say Dacier, via Ozel, Broom, and Odesworth, an Englishing of the famous French prose translation, published specifically to counter Pope's poetic embellishments. Okay, that's interesting. Number 7, in 1773, James Macpherson, written in a rhythmic prose style that attempted to capture an ancient Caledonian folk epic flavor. And number 8, in 1791, William Cowper, which is Cowper, a very famous poet, hymn writer, and so forth. A severe, sweeping blank verse rendering written to deliberately oppose the loose poetic freedoms taken by Alexander Pope. Uh, and that's all in what is called here Phase 1, early English translations through the 18th century. And then in the 19th century, Victorian explosion, verse number 9, or translation number 9, sorry. 1809, James Morris, a rare early 19th century blank verse interpretation following traditional formal classical metrical rules. And then number 10, 1821, William Sotheby, a highly formal verse translation tracking the exact physical structure of the epic. Number 11, 1825. Now, I have copies of the William Cowper. I've looked at that, and I've got copies of some more recent. I don't want to come through this whole list at some point and look for, as many of these as I can find, and see what we can get. It'll be an interesting test of my extra time, if you will, and see how much I have actually. But anyway, I'm already spending a lot of time, and we're only up to the 11th translation, 1825. William Blank, an anonymous, privately printed literal prose translation aimed directly at Oxford University test preparation. Number 12, 1844 to 1845, Lancelot Shadwell, an experimental attempt to force English poetry into traditional, Homeric hexameters. Number 13, in 1846, T.S. Brandreth, a formal structural two-volume verse layout tracking closely to the epic's lines. Number 14, in 1856, Theodore uh, Alois, Buckley, a highly literal, unornamented prose translation favored by Victorian students for test preparations. In number 15, 1861, Matthew Arnold selected structural translations excerpts published explicitly alongside his critical lectures on translating Homer. Number 16, 1862, Ichabod Charles Wright, a stately blank verse translation combining high register syntax with precise narrative clarity. Edward, 17, 1864, Edward Earl of Derby, a highly praised, dignified, and traditional aristocratic blank verse interpretation. Number 18, 1865. J. Henry Dart, a complete translation executed in English hexameters, focusing heavily on battle pacing. Number 19, 1865. Sir John Herschel, a verse translation attempted by the world-famous English polymath and astronomer. Yeah, okay. And then number 20, 1865, Edwin. So we're getting up to the Civil War, or we're in the Civil War time, into the Civil War, I should have said. Edwin W. Simcox, a complete unrhymed hexameter experiment published in London. Number 21, 1866, Philip Stanhope Worsley, uh, composed in Spenserian Spencers, matching his work on the Odyssey. Okay. And number 22, 1869, John Stuart Blackie, a lively ballad metered translation featuring extensive philological and theological notes. Theological notes, okay. I think I know of John Blackie from some other books, like a history of the Bible or Bible history, something like that. Let me check that out, maybe. Number 23, 1871, William Cullen Bryant, a major American blank verse version focusing on a somber, majestic, and distinctly formal tone. Number 24, 1874, J.G. Cordery, and this is, he's going to show up again. So, a highly exact blank verse interpretation focused on mainly maintaining line integrity. Number 25, 1880, Herbert Hailstone, a highly literal prose layout intended primarily for structured school studies. Number 26, 1883, Andrew Lang, Walter Leaf, Ernest Myers, a highly influential archaic prose rendering modeled specifically to sound like the King James Bible. So one interesting, might be interesting to look and find that as soon as I can, anyway. Number 27, 1886, Arthur S. Way, swinging, long-lined, rhyming verse version, prioritizing narrative thrust over exact literalism. Number 28, in 1890, again, J.G. Cordery, a completely revised, line-tightened edition of his 1874 blank verse text. Number 29, in 1891, John Purvis, a rhythmic prose version edited and published posthumously by classical scholars. Number 30, in 1898, the famous Samuel Butler, a highly popular conversational prose version that stripped away high Victorian pretense and used Roman god names. Back that up. It's again Samuel Butler. You will find so many recordings of the Iliad and the Odyssey on YouTube and other places. It's in the public domain, so don't be spending money buying, you know, the audio version. If you want to do anything, go donate to something like LibriVox, and so they'll, continue to put out things like this. It's great stuff. Um, and I'm not saying that you ought to be listening to that one rather than anything else. That's just the most accessible thing. Okay. Uh, I, anyway, um, we'll mention some of these as we go along, possibly the recordings. Call this phase three, if you will, number 20, the 20th century, rather, 20th century expansion, number 31, 1910, Prentice Cummings, an American translation executed in accentual hexameters. 32, 1924, A.T. Murray, keeping in mind he will show up more than once. The official reference level prose translation produced for parallel printing in the Loeb Classical Library. So it should be very available in copies. So anyway, I do recommend looking for that. Go to archive.org or go to Google Books. Google Books is sometimes a little hard to find stuff and a little hard to navigate. Um, or if you Google something, AI may help you with giving you some links or something like that. They do frequently give you a link and it goes to the book wherever it's found in a photocopy. Number 33. In 1934, Sir William Maris, also you will see him at least another time, if not multiple times. A clean, remarkably short and direct blank verse translation mirroring his later Odyssey. And 34, number 1935, Sir William Maris, again, already, a revised, updated verse edition edited for classroom use. Number 35, in 1938, W.H.D. Rose, or Rouse, a plain, direct, and colloquial prose style, excuse me, that aggressively stripped out elevated epic vocabulary. Interesting. Like I said, interesting. um, anyway, I'm trying not to get too distracted because a lot of these names I've heard from somewhere, and I've seen them somewhere. Like we're going to come up to Robert Graves. I'm like, I know Robert Graves from other things, and my mind is automatically just trying to run and say, where have I heard of Rouse from? Where have I heard of, this Evie Ryu or Ryu? Uh, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Rieu. Ryu is what I'm going to say when I get there again. And I'm like, I know where it comes from, but, what's the deal? Of course, I don't have the extra information here to just give you, and I don't want to be that distracted. So, if you see my eyes pop off to the side and things like that, a lot of times that's what I'm thinking. And, you know, hopefully I don't do it too much and I don't do it too distractingly. So I'll shut up about it now. Number 36, in 1944, William Benjamin Smith and Walter Miller, a rare line for line dactyl hexameter experiment, or dactylic rather, dactylic hexameter experiment, hexameter. I definitely want to find that one. Just because it's just the way I want to be. Then number 37, 1950, E.V. Rue, or Raya, I don't know. You can see him again. The historic multi-million selling prose edition that launched the global Penguin Classics catalog. So it should be easy to find. The Penguin Classics, of course, are those black faced books that usually got a picture and there's a line Penguin Classics and then the Odyssey, by Homer and translated by E.V. Brew. Um, I should have looked up how to pronounce that, but anyway, we'll see it later. Number 35, 1951, Richmond Lattimore, the defining academic favorite, widely praised for strictly matching Homer's line-by-line syntax uh, in a unique free hexameter, or however you want to pronounce it. I know people would say this is the right way to pronounce it. I come to doubt a lot of the right way to pronounce something things. All right. Uh, anyway, in a unique free meter, meter, right? Anyway, 39, 1955. S. O. Andrew and M. Oakley, a collaborative mid-century verse translation utilizing a tight, unique five-stress line. And then number 40, 1959, Robert Graves, a highly idiosyncratic and controversial blend of prose and lyric poetry titled The Anger of Achilles. That's interesting. I wonder if that's the whole thing or if it's just a portion or what. All right, but anyway, it doesn't tell me it's less than it, but prose and lyric poetry titled The Anger of Achilles. All right, number 41, 1963. Innis Rees, and we'll see this name again, a loose, rhythmic, free verse layout prioritizing natural breathing and sentence pacing. Okay. And I want to say I've seen that somewhere. I'm not sure. But anyway, number 42. In 1974, Robert Fitzgerald, widely considered the 20th century artistic gold standard, celebrated for its gorgeous, highly lyrical blank verse. You can probably find this on YouTube on the channel for, the Alexander Skirby YouTube channel. Now, either they're using AI or they found a whole bunch of recordings and published them. But he definitely has Robert Fitzgerald's The Odyssey. They don't tell you that. And I asked them, and they didn't tell me. They responded in some like an AI fashion. All right. So anyway, it looks to me much like a very very AI channel, and it's okay in some ways. It's well done. I'll give them that. But anyway, Robert Fitzgerald. Um, it says here. I already read all that. So anyway, we'll meet with this again, but you might find a copy of the recording. You can definitely find the Odyssey on the Alexander McLaren, not McLaren, Alexander Skirby YouTube channel, and you may find uh, the Iliad there too. Uh, and it probably, I would guess, would be the Robert Fitzgerald version. Again, I'm not sure because I'm not sure they don't they should be giving that information. They don't do it on the channel, and but it's different than the Samuel Butler's version, and it's not Richmond um, Latimer's version. So the Odyssey, like I said, I was able to check it, and it's Robert Fitzgerald, even though they wouldn't tell me. Number 44, 1977, J.P. Curtin, an obscure, rhythmically focused British verse layout designed for independent study. Number 44, 1982, Denison Bingham Hall, an experimental poetic iteration utilizing a flowing alternative rhythmic meter. Number 45, 1984. Robert Fitzgerald, a revised, text polished, and finalized edition of his award winning verse text. That's interesting. Number 46, in 1984, Ennis Rees, again, a structurally revised and updated edition of his 1963 verse translation. Number 47, 1987. We've gotten into my lifetime here. Um, a little bit further back than where we're at now. I'm not going to tell you exactly though. Where are we at? 1987. Martin Hammond, a clean, highly accurate, and precise modern prose translation, prioritizing readability over poetic flair. Number 48, 1990, Robert Fagles, a massively popular, best-selling modern free verse version, celebrated for its intense cinematic and theatrical energy. So that's interesting, and I've heard the name over and over and over and over and over again. Fagles was about 30, 36, 46 years ago. 36? I don't know. 36 years ago, something like that. Anyway, you can calculate it. Number 49, 1990, Michael Reck, a rhythmic, minimalist performance style translation layout that is now out of print. Maybe you can find it photocopies. I'm not sure. Number 50, 1993. So we're about two-thirds of the way through here. Alan Mandelbaum, a verse translation utilizing a fluid, distinctly contemporary American poetic rhythm. Number 51, 1997, Stanley Lombardo, a controversial, raw, and fast-moving version optimized explicitly for spoken word performance. Number 52, 1999, Ian Johnston. We'll see this name again. A crisp, highly fluent modern verse translation published concurrently online and in print. Okay. And then phase 4, the 21st century modern masters. Okay. Number 53 is 2003 E.V. Rue, revised by Peter Jones, a thoroughly revised prose edition modernized to smooth out Rue's mid-century idioms. You can do that with a note in the side, you know. I'm always sort of like hesitant to accept that kind of thing, but we can still get the um, earlier intended version. When was that again? 1950. So you should be able to. Maybe they've made it where Penguin Classics only carries this revised edition. I'm not, I'm not totally against it, but it's one of those things where when they say they're smoothing out idioms, it's like we don't talk like that anymore. Do we? Do we not? I mean, it depends. Who talks like much of anything that they talk? Just read some George R. R. Martin. Is that? It's a certain way, you know. Anyway, anyway, not getting too far into all that. The idea is that everything is a learning experience. Really, you can look up all kinds of stuff. Maybe it's an idiom that we're like really unfamiliar with, though. Notes help with that. Um, and if I had it my way, is revision by Peter Jones. When when he says something and changes it, let's say he revises it to smooth it out, he'd put a mark there, you know, one, two, three, whatever, put a footnote, and then say, this originally read this way. This is the idiom. This is how it's explained. This is why I changed it to this. And let everybody, you know, get an educational experience from it. Too many things they will edit to remove this stuff, and they don't let you know what it is, and it actually sounds worse. When you actually look at the differences, the newer version is poorer. Okay. And I refer to something like certain preachers preaching their sermons, their books, things like that, and the way that they said things being edited makes it sound it does not sound as good, and sometimes even loses a part of the thought that's in there. And it's just the truth. This is what happens. But that's my perspective of it's coming from this, preachers and of course the Bible uh, perspective of what it is. And they quote a version of the Bible and then somebody changes it and it's like, whoa, this is different. You can see this again, Spurgeon. Let's just give you an prime example. Is this, and it's in the preface, so I'm not lying to you. It's not something I'm making up either. But in Spurgeon's Morning and Evening, it's been reproduced recently, and I think much poorer. They put morning and evening on the same page. It's just, whew, and it's still too thick. That makes the print small, and it's just, oh, it's not. It is overall unappealing to me. But in the very beginning of it, they're changing it to the English revised or the English standard version rather of recent days, which has been changed a few times, so we don't know about those verses anyway. But anyway, they updated that, and in the preface he says, because we updated the text of the Bible, sometimes it affects the way that this is written, because the wording of the biblical text that Spurgeon quoted from the King James Bible is so different from the English Revised Version, or English Standard Version rather, uh, the ESV, that they had to change his words to fit the new text. That is very telling. They said so, not just me. And when you do that, you messed up. You might as well have just said, well, the King James Version says this right next to the English Standard Version, and let him say what he's saying. And but you know what that does? That exposes the English Standard Version, the ESV, for being so different. So they change it where you only get a note of it in the introduction, and alter the teaching of Spurgeon to fit a modern translation of the Bible. Wow. To me, it's not necessarily Spurgeon's morning and evening anymore, at least in that portion of it. I understand the vast majority of it's going to be essentially the same. But that's an example of it. All this doing is just sad situation to me. So anyway, and it's been going on forever. I'm not gonna convince you to change your mind about it. Right now, I mean, ever since I've been buying things, I've been reading updated for modern language and modern, audiences, changing the idioms and stuff like that. And then I go and find the old thing, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. How it's sometimes better than what I have otherwise. Anyway, 54. Ian Johnston. Um, Met with him already. Get him again. And majorly updated. Structurally revised print edition featuring expanded reference notes. One that came up concurrently online and in print. And that was 2006. Did I say that right? All right. Anyway, 55, 2007, Rodney Merrill. A rare modern accentual dactylic hexameter version seeking to fully replicate the acoustic cadence of ancient Greek. Okay. 56, Frederick Light, I'm sorry, 2009. Frederick Light, a highly unique experimental translation written entirely in formal English sonnet forms. Excuse me. Number 57, 2011, Stephen Mitchell. Stephen Mitchell did both, so this one I'm looking to get at some point. Stephen Mitchell, a brisk, accessible, free verse adaptation that focuses strictly on narrative speed and strips out structural line repetitions. Number 58, 2011, Anthony Verity, a line for line verse rendering prioritizing structural clarity and exact literal translation. Kind of hard to do literal translation. The classical Greek is a broad Greek. It's subject to a lot of, like, you think about it, it's like, it could be this, it could be that. There's a wide variety of possible meaning to it. Um, it anyway. It's for those of you who understand scriptural things. Okay, classical Greek is not a bad way to start understanding Greek. It's just that Koine Greek is more particular and exacting. Classical Greek is written in a broader style that gives itself to interpretiveness. Okay, and the Koine Greek is more as a more common language where you're sitting there talking to somebody and you're being specific in what you're saying. That's something that can be translated then literally into another language, and you're getting what you said across to somebody else. Whereas classical Greek doesn't lend itself to that as well. Um, sure, you can throw the words out there, but then sometimes it's just you almost might say it's a more poetic form, uh, as I understand it. Um, but anyway, be that as it may. Number 59, 2012, Alice Oswald, a radical esoteric performance translation titled Memorial, which strips the epic poem down purely to its accounts of characters' deaths. Okay, so it's not a full translation. It's not a complete translation at all. No, sorry, number 60, 2013, Barry B. Powell, a highly literal modern verse translation emphasizing the oral formulaic traditions of the text. Number 61, Caroline Alexander. Sorry, yeah, 2015. Caroline Alexander, a historic cultural landmark as the first complete English Iliad published by a woman, praised for its elegance, gravity, and fidelity. Might be interesting to look into that one. Number 62, 2015. The There's an addendum to all this. We'll come to that and say that we're almost at the end here of the full translations. Peter Green, a heavily academic line-by-line rendering that tracks closely to the harsh, driving rhythm of ancient Greek. Number 63, 2023, Emily Wilson, a massive literary release matching the original line counts in clean, crisp, fast-paced, modern iambic pentameter or pentameter. Number 64, again, 2024, A.T. Murray, revised by William F. Wyatt, a heavily updated text-polished revision of the classic Loeb Classical Library Parallel Prose Edition. Parallel Prose Edition. A.T. Murray. So that was, again, from earlier. Now, the addendum, major serialized and important book fragments, 18th through the 19th century. This is all before, well, it's from 1700 through before 1900. So number 65, 1700, John Dryden, a highly influential translation of Book One, published alongside classic fables and heavily shaping how Pope later structured his own meter. Number 66, 1709, Thomas Tickell, uh, or Tickell, published a rival translation of Book One at the exact same moment Pope released his, igniting a massive literary war in London. Number 67, 1822, Charles Lloyd, a prominent multi-volume verse translation covering the first half of the epic. Number 68, in 1850, William Selwyn, um, a render, prominent Victorian rendering of the first 9 books of the Iliad into traditional English hexameters. Uh, 69, 1861, Henry Dart, we'll see his name again, uh, an early draft release containing. Do we already see this guy? Henry Dart, 1865. Sorry, I gotta scroll back and check it out. 1860. Yeah, J. Henry Dart. Sorry, the complete translation. So this is the earlier release of books 1 through 12, testing public reception before his of his meter before the 1865 complete release. That's a lot of work done to see whether or not he wanted to finish it up. But anyway, number 70, 1862, James Landon, an academic translation of books 1 through 12, focusing heavily on text critical variants. Number 71, 1864, Thomas Starling or Norgate, in an experimental dramatic blank verse translation of the epic's early major battles. In 72, 1965, Philip Stanhope Worsley, completed by John Cunnington. Worsley translated books 1 through 12 in the Spenserian stanzas before passing away. Cunnington completed the remaining books to create a full collaborative text. Number 73, 1872, Charles Merivale, a grand 2-volume translation executed in rhyming ballad meter 14ers. Number 74, 1878, C.B. Cayley, 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 a highly experimental rendering of the early books attempting to match the quantitative meters of ancient quantitative verse. Okay. And number 75, 1885, H. Smith Wright, a direct, crisp, blank verse rendering focused heavily on the structural speeches of books 1 through 6. All right, so we have all those from the Iliad. There's not a lot of explanation that I need to go into. You can certainly search up these things, but we'll go back to the Odyssey now, or we're going to say go back to the Odyssey, go up to the Odyssey now, and the translations of the Odyssey. I've already read some of these things or pointed to them, so hopefully I can get through it pretty quickly. The historic is divided into several things. The historic 38 up to T.E. Lawrence. Number 1 was the 1614 to 1616 George Chapman, the historic first complete English translation, composed in rhyming iambic pentameter. Number 2, 1656, John Ogilby, a grand folio edition utilizing rhythmic heroic couplets. Number 3, in 1673, Thomas Hobbes, a highly literal rhymed translation by the famous political philosopher. A lot of these are repetitious just because they're the same idea. The person that translated the Odyssey or the Iliad would translate the Odyssey. They just followed each other up. Anyway, number 4, 1725 to 1726, Alexander Pope. The legendary literary success written in highly polished heroic couplets. Number 5, in 1791, William Cooper, a blank verse translation written to counter the looser poetic liberties of Pope. Now, you might enjoy that. Um, Let us do this and go to William Cooper, and I'm just going to open the Odyssey. We got the Iliad as well available, but all right, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Odyssey, Book One. Muse, make the man thy theme, for shrewdness famed, and genius versatile, who far and wide a wanderer after I- Il- Ilium overthrown. Ilium overthrown. Discovered various cities and the mind and the mind and manners learned of men in lands remote. His numerous woes on ocean tossed endured, anxious to save himself and to conduct his followers to their home, yet all his care preserved them not. They perished, self destroyed by their own fault, infatuate, who devoured the oxen of the overseen sun, and punished for that crime returned no more. Daughter divine of Jove, these things record, as it may please thee, even in our ears. I would continue on reading. So it's not rhyming. It's but it is versatile, poetic. Okay, by the very excellent William Cooper. Truly, those are easier to read when you know the story. So you go watch the movie and see what the story is, and as you read it, you're like, oh, he's poetically saying this or that, another thing. Like it doesn't say Troy there. Is Ilium is Troy in that particular? That's interesting. I just um, uh, that or another place that he's talking about. But I again, I got to in order to read these. Sometimes you kind of need to know what he's already talking about. It's just the weird part. But in old days, you would learn as you go. And that's the whole point. Is something that makes it easier to learn is fine, or easier to understand these things is fine. It's um, it's a matter of are you willing to learn and listen? Um, and again, like I said in the last one, what is your memory of the Odyssey and or the Iliad? Okay, no, we don't. Anyway, not going to get into to to ramblings right now, as I may be able to get done with this in a decent time. Number five was William Cooper. All right. Number six, 1806, Charles Lloyd, an early, relatively obscure 19th century verse rendering. Number seven, 1823, Henry Carey, a direct blank verse publication by the famous translator of Dante. And I had a teacher one time buy a bunch of Dante's Inferno from me, and his anyway, he said one of these translations of Dante was the best. So anyway, I'd have to try and find it, but I want to say it was probably the Penguins Classics version of it, but he named the translator. Don't think it was Henry Carey though. The name is just not sparking my mind for it. But anyway, number eight, 1834, William Sotheby. A formal verse translation tracking the exact structure of the epic. Number nine, 1853, Theodore Alois Buckley. Alois, I want to say Lois, it's Alois. Alois. It's Lois with an A in front of it. Aloes. Buckley, a literal, unadorned prose translation. Come on, heavily favored by Victorian students. And number 10, 1861, Matthew Arnold, prominent translated excerpts packaged alongside his famous lectures on translating Homer. Number 11, 1862, Philip Stanhope Worsley, written in Spenserian stanzas, lending the epic a medieval chivalric flavor. Number 12 was 1865, George Musgrave, a traditional high register Victorian blank verse interpretation. Number 13, 1869, George William Eddington, a literal multi-volume blank verse rendering. Number 14, 1871, William Cullen Bryant, an American blank verse version focusing on a dignified, somber tone. Yeah, I want both of the William Cullen Bryant's uh, translations. Anyway, number 15, say both, the Iliad and the Odyssey. 1874, Morden Bernard, a minor but complete rhyming verse interpretation. Number 16, 1879, S.H. Butcher and Andrew Lang, an and archaizing prose translation styled deliberately to sound like the King James Bible. Okay, to go back to the other one that's the Iliad. Anyway, number 17, 1880, Lovelace Big Wither, a complete highly blank verse, highly literal blank verse effort. Number 18, 1884, George Herbert Palmer, a rhythmic, clear prose edition focusing on standard narrative flow. Number 19, 1886, Charles Du Bois Schomburg, an obscure, privately printed late Victorian verse translation. Number 20, 1887, William Morris, a highly stylized, archaic verse adaptation, celebrating the arts and crafts aesthetic. Number 21, 1892, Arthur S. Way, swinging, rhyming verse layout, tracking the epic's narrative pace. Number 22, in 1897, J.W. McHale, an unusual version written entirely in four-line quatrain stanzas. Number 23, 1900, Samuel Butler, a popular, highly conversational prose version that stripped away the Grand Victorian pretension. Number 24, 1904, H.B. Cotterill, an experimental attempt to replicate original hexameter pace using English accentual dactyls. Number 25, 1910, Edgar Alfred Boring, a minor early 20th century rhyme verse rendering. Number 26, 1911, Sir Arthur Quiller Couch, selective lyrical translations found within broader classical anthologies. Not sure what that means. Number 27, 1919, A.T. Murray, the official Loeb Classical Library prose translation printed to run parallel with the original Greek text. The original Greek text means the language of Greek, okay? And I'm not going to jump around on that right now. But something could be said about that, the way that's said. But anyway, number 28. In 1921, Francis Caulfield, a strict, rhythmically metered verse translation. Number 29, in 1922, George Ernley, An Experimental Modern Classical Verse Interpretation. Number 30, 1923, William Hamilton Fyfe, a direct rhythmic prose layout designed primarily for school use. Number 21, in 31, in 1924, J.B. Johnston, a concise, structured prose interpretation published in London. 1925, Sir William Morris, a clean, remarkably short and direct blank verse translation. Number 33, 1925, Alexander Faulkner, a Scottish inflected English prose text. Number 34, 1927, John Henry Fries, a highly exact reference level literal prose translation. Number 35, 1928, Robert Ranulph Merritt, an anthropological focused translation tracking oral storytelling roots. Anthropological. Okay. Number 46, 1930, H.R. King, a dramatic verse adaptation tailored strictly for student play readings. Okay. Number 37, 1931, S.O. Andrew, initial metric experiments that laid the groundwork for his eventual complete version. So we'll see the name again in a little bit. Number 38, 1932, T.E. Lawrence, the famous novelistic and highly stylized prose version, uh, published under his pseudonym T.E. Shaw. This is the exact 28th rendering that Lawrence cited in his introduction. So, in this particular comment that's being made there, AI is trying to tell me that this is the in the introduction or in the beginning where Lawrence introduces his translation. He says this is the 28th rendering, English rendering of this Odyssey, and what would be special about it, that kind of thing. So you can go read it. You can read T. Lawrence. Um, so AI is kind of building the answer around that. I'm like, let's if this is the 38th, it kept giving me like 10 or 15 things. So I finally found 37 others before, and some of it is a little bit questionable as to whether that's what was meant or not. But anyway, um, it doesn't really make a big difference or a big matter. Uh, just letting you know what that is referring to. But I'm going from there, and we're getting another 30. So let's go. 39, 1938. W.H.D. Rouse, a plain, direct, and highly conversational colloquial prose translation. So it'd be interesting to find both of those in that. And number 40, 1945, E.V. Rue, the historic million-selling prose translation that launched the global Penguin Classics line. So that's interesting. Uh, Actually, let me do this. It's 39. Scrolling back. Yeah, in 1950, it's giving the same statement. The historic million-selling prose edition that launched the global Penguin Classics line or Classics catalog, 1950, for his translation of the Iliad. Now, to think about it, I mean, this is where AI kind of falls short, is like understanding what we're looking at. 5 years before that, the line was, launched by the translation of the Odyssey. right? 5 years after the Iliad launched the line or the catalog. Maybe they mean something different by the line than the catalog. They meaning, whoever's saying it, wherever it may be found, maybe Penguin Classics has said this. I'm not sure. Anyway, number 41, 1948, S.O. Andrew. And uh, this is the complete finalized verse translation. Is number, 37 up here. Uh, Complete finalized translation, verse translation, utilizing a unique five stress line. Then number 42, 1950, F.L. Lucas, a poetic verse rendering utilizing long sweeping rhyming lines. Number 43, 1952, Ennis Rees. And we either saw him before, we're going to see him again anyway, but we might have seen him earlier. Can't remember, but we definitely saw him in the Odyssey, the Iliad part. Anyway, a clear, highly readable, and loose, free verse modern interpretation. Number 44, 1961, Robert Fitzgerald, widely considered a 20th century gold standard, celebrated for its gorgeous lyrical blank verse. Number 45, in 1965, Richmond Lattimore, the academic favorite, valued for strictly matching Homer's original line-by-line syntax. That's the other one I definitely want to get physical copy of, um, to be able to have it, to have both of them. Because, like I said, I've already got the Iliad there. Anyway, number 46, 1967, Innes Rees. Again, an updated text polished version of his 1952 verse translation. Number 47, 1969, Walter Schuring. Anyway, a widely praised, exact, and highly dignified modern prose version. Number 48, 1974, Albert Cook, a literal line for line modern verse, free verse iteration. Number 49, 1974, Denison Bingham Hall, set in a unique flowing alternative poetic meter. Number 50, 1980, Walter Jackson Bate, a rapid prose layout designed strictly to maximize narrative speed. 1900, Alan Mandelbaum, a verse translation utilizing a fluid, distinctly contemporary American poetic style. That's 1999. Number 52, 1993, Robert Bringhurst, a strictly rhythmic, experimental performance style translation layout. Number 53, 1996, Robert Fagles, a massively popular best-selling modern free verse version known for its theatrical energy. Number 54, 1997, Peter Green, and we'll see Peter Green again, a precise literal verse translation tracking closely to the Greek hexameter cadence. Number 55, 1998, Edward McCrory. Again, we'll see a clean modern verse interpretation featuring deep structural introductory notes. Number 56, 2000, Stanley Lombardo, a highly conversational, fast-moving version optimized for spoken word performance. I believe that was also said of the Iliad. Then we have the contemporary 21st century post Wilson releases. Number 57, 2002, Martin Hammond, a clean, highly accurate, and clear modern prose translation. Number 58, 2006, Rodney Merrill, a rare modern attempt to completely recreate the original Greek dactylic hexameter in English. Dactylic. Anyway, number 59, 2007, Edward McCrory, revised verse text paired with a significantly deeper academic commentary. Number 60, 2014, Barry B. Powell, a literal modern verse translation emphasizing the oral formulaic tradition. Number 61, 2016, Anthony Verity, a line for line verse rendering prioritizing clarity over poetic flair. Number 62, 2017, and we'll see her name again, Emily Wilson, a historic cultural landmark as the first complete English Odyssey, published by a woman, matching the Greek line count in strict iambic pentameter. Number 63, 2018, Stephen Mitchell, a brisk, accessible, free verse adaptation that focuses on narrative momentum and strips out repetitive formulaic lines. Number 64, 2019, Tom Lathrop, an unpretentious, clear prose layout designed explicitly for introductory college classrooms. Number 65, 2021, Emily Wilson, an updated, revised, and expanded text edition of her best selling 2017 verse translation. All right, updated, revised, expanded text edition of the verse translation. Then number 66, 2022, Ian Johnston, a crisp, fluent, modern English verse translation, published concurrently online and in print traditions. Number 67, 2023, Peter Green, um, which we saw before, I believe. Yep, Peter Green, 1997. A heavily polished and completely updated version of his 1997 text. Then number 68, 2025, Daniel Mendelsohn, a deeply lyrical verse translation utilizing an expansive, rolling six-beat line that restores the epic's former archaic grandeur. Now, that's the last one of these mentioned. Daniel Mendelsohn, I don't know whether or not he translated the Iliad. Yeah, we're gonna say that. All right, so let me see if I can pull up some information on that. I'm going to try to keep me on the screen here, on my screen. Daniel Mendelsohn, uh, he has not translated the Iliad yet, but did do this. He also did a review, as I understand it, and I haven't read it yet, of the Odyssey. Um, and looks like he talks about at some place Robert Fagel's translation, new translation of the Odyssey. There's an interview with him translating the Odyssey with Daniel Mendelsohn. And okay, so there's several um, different. So he spent 6.5 years translating. Sorry, completing. It may be something that he comes out with at some point. He may be working on it. I don't know. Uh, he's done critiques on it. He's written about it, but he did a critique on the Nolan's The Odyssey, and I just suggest you try to find it and look at it. Uh, Somebody might mention Stephen Fry and say, "Well, didn't Stephen Fry write on The Odyssey or translate it?" No, he didn't. But you can certainly look up his stuff. His thing is, I want to say he retold the story is what he did for the Odyssey, and he does like a more in depth like searching of Troy and the mythology of it all and stuff like that. So there's like a 3 volume set of his work on Homer's stuff, basically the Greek things. Now I don't know it's all Homer and all that. I'm not. I'm just saying. It came to my mind. I was like, I know that Stephen Fry did something about this stuff, and when I looked it up, I was like, oh, okay, he didn't do exactly um, what I would have been hoping for, is to be able to see it like a translation of the Odyssey and the Iliad, but he did something else that would be interesting to some academics or people that are fairly interested in these classics in the Greek mythology and stuff like that. Uh, Go right ahead, have fun, wonderful fun. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Now, again, going to this idea of translating the Greek, you can find Greek versions of uh, of of this. Okay, so so I found at least a couple of them and put them out there. And as I read through there, you saw that there was a parallel, English and Greek on some of these things. In Greek, I found the A.T. Murray one, uh, uh, and a the Iliad according to Wolfe, John J. Owen, and and this one, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is all in Greek. It's all, uh, if I'm not mistaken, the entire thing is in Greek until you get to notes or something like that. And then, yeah, yeah. And I haven't searched into it, so it's all written there. Now, the original Greek does not refer to, you know, uh, what necessarily was first written down. So you can certainly study all that out, oral tradition and this and that and all these other things. I also found the Odyssey, according to Wolfe, John J. Owen, um, from 1800s, um, in Greek. So that those two so far, um, and like I already said, the A.T. Murray one, the A.T. Murray, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is translation. Wait a minute, Homer. Yeah, the Iliad. Skip, 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 skip. Yeah, it's a page, one page, the other page. Uh, One page is Greek, the other page is an English translation by A.T. Murray. So those are available out there. You can search these things out for yourself and find them. And the question then is, we read somewhere where they had critical variants, that they focused on in the Greek. All right, so uh, Homer's Odyssey in Greek will be certain text, and unless you read Greek and or and a lot of times Latin or something like that, you find these things where they originally are and being republished from and stuff like that. Uh, they'll have introductions a lot of times. A lot of these academic things, old academic things, written in Latin, and and you know you need to read that in order to understand where they're coming at you from. You know, and that's what I mean when I say it, just like that. They are presenting something to you based on a certain perspective. Uh, anyway, uh, and this is, I don't want to ramble too much to go on with this, but having to do with all this is just these people are translating classical Greek, you know, and like I said, it's open to some interpretation, more than Koine Greek sort of really is, depending on your theory of translation. Then they probably have different theories of translation. A lot of them are trying to, like it said already, match the poetic styles of the Greek, the hexameter. Um, Emily Wilson's is in iambic pentameter, so it's going to sound somewhat Shakespearean, somewhat. and of course it's modern, but I'm just saying it's the rhythm of it. It's a flow, sort of like Shakespearean. Um, and that's you know, and I'm not judging it. When people judge translations, the vast majority of the time somebody's talking to you about translations, they are saying, "I like Fagel's translation. I like Richmond Lattimore's translation. It goes really well with, matching up lines and finding these things in the Greek." They mean that you can look at it if you want to. You can search it out. They've never read the Greek. The vast majority of them have never read the Greek version of it, and even a lot of these translators are not necessarily just reading Greek. They have a, 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 a working knowledge of Greek where they can look at the word. You got a definition or a dictionary or a lexicon that's available to them, especially, and they can move the words into English in a systematic way. And I mean that because there are translators. I'm sure that multitudes of these translations, I'm sure many of these that we went over are really just somebody else saying, "Well, I'm going to rewrite the way this is written." Rather, they're not really translating from Greek. They're they're rewriting the idea. They're maybe utilizing some Greek or some other translation and saying, "Oh, this is this. We're going to alter it to this." They're actually coming at it from English and just touching on some things in Greek. That's the idea. Um, but I'm not discounting their work really uh, in what they're doing. I'm just saying that you need to think about more what these people are saying and doing that claim this stuff. Again, a working knowledge of Greek does not necessarily mean you can speak it. But of course, if you're a modern Greek speaker, you probably can go and read through this old classical Greek, the Odyssey, and you just need a dictionary occasionally to find some words. So there's certainly people that can understand it and read it in Greek. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are people in English that don't really understand Greek that claim they're translating it. Okay, and I'm trying to get you to comprehend it in the best possible way um, of my being able to say it. It's like, and I feel like I'm failing you, but the 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 fact of the matter is that um, uh, whew, just go back, just read three or four of these translations and just see. You get the gist of the same thing. Sometimes comes across. Sometimes it's just wildly retold. Okay, it, in a very different way. And was that reactions to some and to somebody being overly poetic and taking poetic license so they could make a rhyme up like Alexander Pope apparently? And I don't doubt, that these things are so. Alexander Pope said it a certain way because he made it fit his rhyming pattern. And that is a, you know, very licensed, interpretation. And then some people just bring the words over a little bit better. So a lot of those things where we're reading very precise, you know, bringing the words, they're bringing the words over. That could be done by you. You can get a dictionary, look up each word, and just write each word down as a, word for word translation. And then when you read it, say, okay, according to how I know the story goes, also, I'm going to reword it to say this. and you can translate this yourself. I mean, you could take the Greek copies that are available, and there's different Greek copies available. This is kind of what I was alluding to before. Is there's going to be some variance between these things, and there's fill in to these to those to the Greek. So I mean, go and try to find the old manuscript version of these things, of the Odyssey. It's going to be tough for you to read. What I've seen anyway of copies that they have in museums, plastered somewhere. The oldest copy anywhere is just a little fragment. It's nowhere near the entirety of the books. So, but I leave y'all to search those things out and look at them. Most of it's just declared to you as we have found this out, therefore no questions. It is the way I read a lot of these things, which is okay sometimes. We found it out. We don't need to question it. Um, and if you really got to find out how they found out, then you read the other guys' stuff that found this stuff, and try to understand them. Uh, it gets really really complicated. I think I'm rambling. And I'm not really making a whole lot of sense, or even what am I trying to say? I don't know what I'm trying to say. Right now, I've kind of lost my train of thought. But I've given you a whole bunch of possible options. I hope it inspires you, if nothing else, just read one or two maybe of these translations yourself, or listen to them online, what you can find. Um, Again, easiest accessible, Samuel Butler's. You look up on YouTube the Iliad audiobook. Almost guarantee you, no, I guarantee you, the vast majority of what you find, go through the list. Most of them are going to be Samuel Butler's. You might find a couple others of them. All right. If you go to Audible books or Audible and other audiobook things, then you may find you'll probably be able to find Emily Wilson's translation, stuff like that. Things you have to pay for. I myself want to get Daniel Mendelsohn's and would like to see that he does the Iliad as well. Also Stephen Mitchell's eventually, some things in physical, and then get the other classic things, the Fagles in both Iliad and the Odyssey. Um, if they if somebody is reproducing William Cooper's in a physical form, I would gladly get a physical copy of that. That would be pretty cool. Um, as the money comes in and as I have the ability and what I find, that's what I'll be doing. But anyway, yeah, this is mostly academic. Hopefully, this is somewhat fun. Uh, just presenting this list for you. Some you could certainly spend hours and hours looking up for yourself, but I've got it here in one place. Anybody wants a copy of this list, maybe I'll be able to publish it somewhere here. Uh, I don't know. I'm not sure how that would work, but I'll see what I can do about that. Huh. Anyway, if you're interested, let me know, and that way I'll know that I could waste my time doing it. At least I'm not wasting my time completely doing it. If you're interested, I would like to get it to you. So anyway, uh, make it a ready reference for you, that kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I got to get on here or get off of this video, move on to the next thing. Hope that you enjoyed it. Leave comments below if you will. What's your introduction to the Iliad, the Odyssey? Is it all movies? That's fine too. I mean, I'm okay with it. That is. Um, what is your memory of these kind of things? And anyway, I no reminiscing. Anyway, um, and what do you think of the movie Troy? Troy. Uh, whether it's director's cut or the theatrical cut. I'm not trying to trick you with anything. I'm just curious. What do you think of the movie Troy? I think that there's some good actors. I was like watching it again. I was like, whoa, this guy is in it, and that guy is in it. Brendan Gleeson's in it. Brian Cox is in it. Of course, Brad Pitt. Everybody knows Brad Pitt. Eric Bana and Orlando Bloom, Diane Kruger, and I mean, my goodness, it's just like, who in the world is not in this? And how did they not do better? And anyway, I'm rambling, and I'm getting into my criticisms again. I don't want to do that. I want to go on, move on. Let's go on. Let's go on. Let's go on to the next thing. Uh, Look for whatever else I'm putting out there. Hopefully, you enjoy this content or some of it. And if you don't like this, there's something else out there, a movie review or anything else. And my yeah, I'm not gonna say any more in this video because it may come out. What I'm talking about may be out before this video comes out. So let's just leave it at that. We'll see you in the next video. Hopefully, you have a great day, and we'll see you again. Bye.